She sent a bulldozer through my locked gate before sunrise. I woke up expecting another quiet morning on my Colorado ranch. Instead, I found a bulldozer inside my locked gate, an HOA president ordering my emergency antenna torn down, and a contractor convinced my land belonged to someone else. At first, I thought it was just another property dispute. Then the sheriff arrived. A buried county line came to light, and every bucket of dirt uncovered a secret nobody expected. By the end of that day, the real fight wasn't over a tower at all. It was over the truth hidden beneath the road. If you enjoy stories about ordinary landowners standing their ground with patience, evidence, and the law instead of shouting matches, take a second to subscribe. There are plenty more true-to-life HOA and ranch stories waiting just down the road. The first thing I saw that Friday morning wasn't the bulldozer. It was Brenda Whitmore. She stood just inside the broken gate to my Colorado ranch with a clipboard tucked beneath one arm, dressed like she was attending a neighborhood landscaping inspection instead of trespassing on private property. Behind her, a yellow bulldozer idled with a low diesel growl while dust drifted across the pasture. The machine hadn't stopped at my locked entrance. It had already pushed halfway through it. For one strange second, my mind refused to believe what my eyes were seeing. Then I noticed the chain. It hung from the splintered gatepost, cleanly cut, one end dragging through the dirt. I eased my pickup to a stop 20 yards away and stepped out without slamming the door. The contractor operating the bulldozer glanced at me, then looked toward Brenda instead of shutting the machine down. That told me everything. This wasn't confusion. This was planned. The morning had started like every other Friday. I'd driven into town before sunrise to pick up hydraulic fittings for one of the irrigation pumps near the lower pasture. It should have been an uneventful trip. Instead, as I rounded the last bend leading home, I saw heavy equipment where only cattle and deer belonged. The bulldozer's blade rested against the remains of my southern gate. Beyond it, nearly 300 yards away on the rise behind my equipment barn, stood my communications antenna, 50 feet of galvanized steel, straight, silent, exactly where it had stood for years. Brenda lifted one hand when she saw me. Not a wave, more like someone acknowledging they'd been expecting an audience. "Good morning, Caleb," she called across the gravel. "You've got about 5 seconds, I answered, keeping my voice steady, to explain why there's a bulldozer inside my ranch. She smiled. It wasn't nervous. It wasn't embarrassed. It was the kind of smile people wear when they've convinced themselves they're completely untouchable. "The board has approved the removal." She said it as casually as someone announcing that flowers were being planted. I looked past her toward the contractor. He was in his 50s, sunburned, wearing a faded work shirt with the name Ray stitched above one pocket. His hands rested on the controls, but he wasn't moving. Not yet. "You Ray Miller?" I asked. He nodded once. "You've crossed a locked private gate." He looked back toward Brenda again before answering. "She said this access belonged to the association." "It doesn't." Brenda stepped forward before he could respond. "It does under the new preservation zone." I almost laughed. Almost. Cedar Ridge Estates doesn't own 1 inch of this ranch. It affects the appearance of the subdivision. It affects my property. She tapped the clipboard. The board voted. The board can vote to paint the clubhouse purple if it wants. I pointed toward the broken gate. It can't vote itself onto my land. For the first time, her smile tightened. "You're creating unnecessary conflict." "No," I shook my head. "You brought heavy equipment through my gate." A gust of wind carried more dust across the pasture. The cattle farther uphill had stopped grazing. Even they seemed uneasy about the unfamiliar engine noise rolling across the valley. I pulled my phone from my pocket and started recording. Brenda noticed immediately. "There's no need for that." "I disagree." I slowly turned the camera toward the broken chain, then the bulldozer, then the tire tracks crossing my fence line, then Brenda herself. What exactly are you authorizing today? She squared her shoulders. The removal of an unapproved structure. My antenna isn't your structure. It violates community standards. My ranch isn't your community. She sighed dramatically, like I was the difficult one. You've had 72 hours. I had 72 hours to ignore an illegal demand. She looked toward Ray. You can continue. Ray didn't move. He looked uncomfortable now. Ma'am, it's fine. She interrupted him before he finished. The HOA owns this corridor. No, it doesn't, I said. I have the documents. So do I. Then show me the recorded easement. She stared at me. I waited. Nothing. No easement number? Silence. No county recording? She looked irritated now. The board approved this. That's not what I asked. Behind Ray, another worker climbed down from an excavator parked farther back on the ranch road. He couldn't have been older than 25. He studied the broken gate. Then me. Then Brenda. His expression suggested he wasn't nearly as certain about any of this. I appreciated that. Some people still recognize the difference between confidence and authority. I walked several feet closer, staying well clear of the bulldozer. Ray, he looked at me. If you move that machine another foot, you're knowingly operating on private property. Brenda answered before he could. The association assumes full responsibility. I met her eyes. Do you? She didn't blink. I do. I turned the phone slightly so the camera framed her face. Can you repeat that? She hesitated just long enough for me to notice. Then she nodded. I am directing this work. There it was. Not rumor, not assumption, not hearsay, her own words. I saved the recording automatically. Then I reached into my truck, grabbed another phone from the center console and dialed. Deputy Luke Daniels answered on the second ring. Luke, it's Caleb. I've got heavy equipment inside my property. His voice changed instantly. What kind of equipment? Bulldozer, excavator. Anyone hurt? Not yet. Who's there? Brenda Whitmore, contractor named Ray Miller. I watched Brenda talking quietly with Ray while I spoke. Luke asked, did they force entry? They cut my chain. You stay calm. I intend to. I'm on my way. Before I could answer, Brenda raised one arm toward the bulldozer. Ray looked at me one last time. Then reluctantly, he pushed the control lever. The diesel engine roared louder. Steel tracks bit into the dirt. The blade lifted slightly. The bulldozer rolled forward. It crossed completely over my fence line before I could finish the call. Luke, I said into the phone, never taking my eyes off the machine. They're moving. I'm 5 minutes out, Deputy Luke Daniels replied. Don't confront them physically. Keep recording. The call ended. I slipped the phone into my shirt pocket without stopping the video. Every second mattered now. Ray Miller eased the bulldozer another 20 feet into my pasture before stopping again. He wasn't driving recklessly. If anything, he looked like a man hoping someone would tell him to shut the engine off. Brenda Whitmore had no such hesitation. She pointed directly toward the ridge behind my equipment barn. That's the structure. Ray looked over his shoulder. You want me all the way up there? Yes. I stepped forward just enough for my voice to carry. Ray, you've already crossed private property. Every foot farther becomes another piece of evidence. He removed one hand from the controls. I've got a signed work authorization. From someone who doesn't own this land. Brenda folded her arms. The association controls this preservation corridor. No, I answered. You keep saying that because you know it sounds official. She didn't respond. Instead, she looked toward the excavator operator. You'll follow behind once the gate opening is clear. The younger operator shifted uneasily in his seat. He looked at the antenna standing above the barn, then back at the broken gate. I thought this was HOA property. It isn't, I said. Neither worker answered. That silence told me more than words could. Neither of them had ever seen a deed. Neither had checked county records. They had simply believed the client. 3 days earlier, I almost had. Not because I believed Brenda, because I couldn't imagine someone bold enough to invent a property line. That Monday afternoon had begun quietly. The cattle were grazing near the eastern pasture while I inspected one of the backup battery cabinets beside the antenna. The tower itself wasn't especially impressive unless you understood what it did. To most people, it looked like 50 feet of galvanized steel rising above a weathered equipment barn. To Rachel Foster at County Emergency Management, it was something entirely different. When wildfires swept through these canyons or heavy snow knocked out commercial communications, the relay mounted on that tower carried emergency traffic across terrain where cell towers couldn't reach. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't profitable, it simply worked. That was enough for me. I had finished checking the grounding cables when a white SUV rolled slowly up my driveway. Cedar Ridge Estates. I recognized the logo before Brenda even stepped out. She carried a large envelope tucked beneath one arm. "I assume you know why I'm here," she said. "I doubt it." She handed me the envelope without waiting for permission. Across the front, bold letters read, "Final Notice of Non-Compliance." Inside was a neatly typed letter demanding removal of what they described as an unauthorized industrial communications structure. I kept reading. Violation of visual harmony, negative impact on surrounding property values, mandatory removal within 72 hours, possible daily fines, potential lien proceedings. By the time I reached the last page, I almost admired the confidence it took to write something so thoroughly detached from reality. "Interesting," I said. Brenda smiled. "We've tried to be patient. You've tried to regulate land you don't own." She unfolded another document. "This is our updated community preservation map." I looked at it carefully. The shaded area extended well beyond Cedar Ridge's northern entrance. Far beyond. According to Brenda's map, nearly 300 feet of my ranch had somehow become part of an HOA landscape buffer. It was absurd. Not because the line was close, because it ignored fences, survey markers, recorded monuments, and nearly 40 years of county records. "You actually believe this? It's the official HOA boundary." "No," I pointed toward the ridge. "It's your marketing brochure." Her smile faded. "Our legal committee approved it." "I didn't ask about your committee." I walked back into my office inside the barn and opened the metal filing cabinet that had belonged to my father. Second drawer, property records, county surveys, warranty deed, original plat. Within 30 seconds, I laid the county survey beside Brenda's color printout. The difference was impossible to miss. The official county plat ended exactly at my northern fence. Brenda's version crossed it by almost 300 feet. She studied both papers without speaking. Finally, she tapped mine. "Those records are old. They're recorded. Ours are newer. They're imaginary." That was the first moment I saw irritation replace confidence. She wasn't expecting resistance. She certainly wasn't expecting documentation. "I'll have our attorney contact you," she said. "I'd recommend that." She gathered her papers. "You still have 72 hours. For what?" "To remove the antenna." I folded the county plat and slid it back into its protective sleeve. "The antenna stays. You may regret that decision." I looked past her toward the subdivision entrance visible beyond the ridge. "No," I said quietly. "I think someone else will." Back in the present, I watched Brenda standing beside my broken gate, giving orders as though none of that conversation had ever happened. She knew exactly where the real property line was. She had seen the county plat with her own eyes. Yet somehow she had returned with bulldozers instead of surveyors. That wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was a decision. Ray slowly released the bulldozer controls again. The machine crept another few feet toward the rise where the antenna stood against the morning sky. I checked the road behind me. Still no sheriff, still no flashing lights. Then my phone vibrated. A new message from Rachel Foster. Luke called me. Don't let them touch the tower. I'm coming too. I looked back toward Brenda. For the first time since she'd arrived, I wasn't wondering whether she was wrong. I was wondering why she was in such a hurry. Because nobody risks this much over a steel tower unless there's something far more valuable hidden behind it. The bulldozer idled where Ray had stopped it, waiting for Brenda's next order. The engine rumbled across the pasture, but my attention shifted somewhere else entirely. 3 days. That was all Brenda had given me. 72 hours from the moment she'd stood in my driveway holding that fabricated preservation map to the moment she returned with heavy equipment. Nobody spends thousands of dollars moving bulldozers, excavators, contractors, and work crews over a neighborhood complaint. Not unless the deadline matters. I looked back at Brenda. She wasn't watching the antenna anymore. She kept checking her phone, every couple of minutes, like she was waiting for confirmation that something else was still on schedule. That bothered me more than the bulldozer, because people who are confident don't rush. People who are racing a clock do. 3 days earlier, after Brenda drove away, I hadn't wasted much time being angry. I drove straight into Grand Junction and parked outside Megan Cole's office. She had handled ranch property cases across western Colorado for nearly 20 years, and if there was anyone who understood boundary disputes, it was Megan. She spread Brenda's notice across the conference table. Then she unfolded my deed. Next came the county plat. Finally, she laid Brenda's so-called preservation map beside the official survey. She didn't say anything for almost a minute. Then she leaned back in her chair. This isn't a mistake. I didn't think so. They didn't accidentally draw across your property. She tapped Brenda's map with a pen. They expanded their authority. Can they do that? They can print anything they want. She smiled slightly. It doesn't make it legal. She opened the county GIS records on her computer. The satellite overlay matched my deed perfectly. Fence line, survey monuments, recorded easement, everything aligned. Then she opened Cedar Ridge Estates' recorded plat. It ended exactly where I'd always known it ended, more than 200 feet north of my fence. They know this, I nodded. I showed Brenda. Megan looked back at the papers. Then she's acting despite actual notice. Those 4 words stayed with me. Actual notice. Legally, it mattered. Brenda couldn't later claim she misunderstood the property line if she'd already been shown the recorded documents. Megan began making copies. I'm drafting a cease and desist, I figured. I'm also sending copies by certified mail. So nobody can claim they never received it. Exactly. She looked directly at me. From this point forward, document everything. I already have cameras. Good. Save every message. I will. Don't argue with them. I wasn't planning to. And Caleb, she paused. If they come onto your land anyway, what? Let them create the evidence. I remembered those words now as I stood beside my broken gate. That advice was the only reason I wasn't standing in front of the bulldozer. The easiest way to lose a legal case is to let anger become the story. Brenda wanted that. She wanted photographs of the stubborn rancher screaming at contractors. Instead, every camera on my property was recording a different version. One showed the cut chain, another overlooked the service road, a third faced the barn and antenna. The timestamps would tell the story far better than I ever could. Back in Megan's office, she finished typing the letter. She read it aloud before printing. Cedar Ridge Estates is hereby notified that the antenna located on Caleb Morgan's ranch sits entirely upon privately owned property outside HOA jurisdiction. She continued, any unauthorized entry, removal attempt, or interference with the structure may constitute civil trespass, property damage, and interference with county emergency communications infrastructure. She slid the page toward me. I've enclosed copies of your deed. She added another stack. The county survey. Another. The antenna permit. Then another. And Rachel Foster's emergency communications agreement. I looked at the growing pile. No one can honestly claim they weren't warned. That's the point. She sealed everything into one thick envelope. I'm sending one copy to the HOA. What about Brenda? She gets her own. And the attorney. He gets one too. Megan handed me a duplicate binder. You keep this. I flipped through it. Every important document sat behind plastic sleeves. Deed, survey, permits, recorded agreements, photographs, certified mailing receipts. If anything happens, she tapped the binder. Don't explain. Just hand them this. Back at the ranch that same evening, I walked the property line myself. Not because I doubted it, because I wanted fresh photographs showing every survey monument before anything changed. Tom Bennett met me near the northern fence. He leaned against his pickup. I heard Brenda's been around. Word travels fast, he laughed. In Cedar Ridge? It travels before it happens. He became serious. She wasn't happy after leaving your place. What did she say? Tom hesitated. I was loading hay at the supply yard. And? She was talking to someone from the developer. What developer? I don't know. But I heard one sentence. What sentence? Tom looked toward my antenna. That tower has to disappear before Friday. I frowned. Did she say why? No. But whoever she was talking to, he paused, asked if she'd solved the view problem. View problem, not safety, not regulations, not emergency communications. The view. I hadn't understood it then. Standing beside my shattered gate now, it suddenly made perfect sense. Luxury ridge homes, mountain views, property brochures, investors, an antenna visible above the ridgeline. That wasn't an HOA complaint. That was a real estate problem. And someone believed my ranch was standing between them and a very expensive sale. The rumble of the bulldozer pulled me back to the present. Brenda lowered her phone and walked toward Ray. We've already lost enough time, she said. Keep moving. Ray didn't touch the controls. I'd like to see the easement paperwork first. You don't need to. I usually do. Brenda's smile disappeared completely. I hired you to remove a tower. Ray looked from her to me, then to the broken gate. Finally, he said quietly, I wasn't hired to start a lawsuit. Brenda stepped closer to the bulldozer, lowering her voice as if that could make the situation private. You were hired to complete a lawful removal. Ray shook his head. You told me the association owned the corridor. It does. Then show me the easement. Her jaw tightened. I already gave you the board authorization. That's not an easement. For the first time that morning, Brenda looked uncertain. Not afraid. Not yet. But the control she'd carried through my gate had begun to slip. She turned toward me. You've intimidated my contractor. I told him the truth. You threatened legal action. My attorney did that 3 days ago. Brenda glanced at the binder lying open on the hood of my pickup. She knew exactly what was inside. Megan Cole's cease and desist had been delivered by certified mail to Brenda's house, the HOA office, and Cedar Ridge's attorney. Each envelope contained the same records: my deed, the official survey, the tower permit, and the county emergency agreement. The warning had not been vague. Do not enter. Do not damage the antenna. Do not claim authority over Caleb Morgan's ranch. Brenda had signed for her copy herself. I pulled the delivery receipt from the binder and held it up. That's your signature. She barely looked at it. You can wave papers around all morning. The board has enforcement authority. Over Cedar Ridge. This antenna affects Cedar Ridge. So does the sunset. You don't own that either. Ray climbed down from the bulldozer. The engine remained running, but his boots were on the ground now. That shifted the balance. Brenda could order machinery forward, but she couldn't operate it herself. The younger excavator operator shut his engine off without being asked. The sudden drop in noise made Brenda's voice sound sharper. "Turn that back on." He remained in the cab. "Ray told me to wait. I hired both of you." Ray stepped between Brenda and the machine. "Until I see recorded authority, we're paused." Brenda took out her phone. "Then I'll call your office." "Go ahead." She walked several yards away, speaking fast and low. While she argued, my phone rang. "Megan." I answered immediately. "Tell me they haven't touched the tower." "They crossed the gate. Equipment is inside." Ray stopped for now. "Did Luke arrive?" "Not yet." "Keep the recording running." "It hasn't stopped." "Good. I just spoke to Cedar Ridge's attorney." That caught my attention. "What did he say?" "He claims he advised the board yesterday that they needed either your written consent or a court order." I looked at Brenda. "Does he know they're here?" "He does now." "And?" There was a short pause. He sounded surprised. That meant one of two things. Either the HOA attorney was protecting himself, or Brenda had acted without telling him. Both possibilities helped me. "Megan, Tom heard something about an investor tour." "What exactly?" "He heard Brenda say the tower had to disappear before Friday. Someone mentioned a view problem." "Today is Friday." "I know." "Then this is moving faster than a normal HOA dispute." "That's what I thought." "I'll contact the county clerk and pull every recent filing tied to Cedar Ridge." "What are you looking for?" "Development options, pending sales, revised plats, anything with a deadline." Brenda turned her back to us, still arguing on the phone. Megan continued. "Do not let her take any documents from you. Give copies only to law enforcement." "Understood." "And Caleb?" "Yes?" "Her attorney just emailed me something." "What?" "A copy of the board minutes approving the removal." "That sounds useful." "It is, but not for Brenda." "Why?" "The minutes are dated Tuesday night." I understood immediately. Tuesday was the day after Brenda received the legal warning. So the board voted after they saw my deed. Exactly. And after they saw the county agreement. Yes. That made the situation worse for every board member whose name appeared on the vote. Anything else? "The minutes call the tower an abandoned private structure." I looked toward the antenna. Its battery cabinet was locked. The county inspection sticker was current. The cable line was maintained. Nothing about it looked abandoned. "Rachel tested it last month." I have her report. Then they lied in writing. Or Brenda lied to them. Before I could respond, Tom Bennett's pickup appeared beyond the damaged gate. He stopped outside the fence and climbed out holding his phone. Brenda ended her call the moment she saw him. "What are you doing here?" she asked. Tom looked at the bulldozer, the severed chain, and the splintered posts. "Looks like I'm witnessing a crime scene." "This is authorized HOA work." Tom raised his phone. "That's not what you said yesterday." Brenda went still. I looked at him. "What did she say?" Tom walked closer, staying outside the machinery path. "I was near the clubhouse loading feed when she met Ray." Ray turned toward him. "You were there?" "Across the lot." Tom tapped his screen. "I didn't catch everything, but I caught enough." Brenda's expression changed. Not irritation this time, fear. "Recording private conversations is illegal," she said. "We were standing in an open parking lot," Tom replied. "You were loud." He played the clip. Brenda's voice came through the small speaker, thin but unmistakable. "The investor group arrives Friday afternoon. That tower cannot be in the view photographs." Then Ray's voice. "What if the owner objects?" Brenda answered without hesitation. "He already did. By the time he gets an injunction, it will be gone." Nobody spoke when the recording ended. Ray stared at her. "You knew he objected before you hired me." Brenda stepped toward Tom. "Delete that." He put the phone in his pocket. "No." She looked around, as though searching for someone still willing to follow her orders. The workers avoided her eyes. Ray walked to the bulldozer and reached up toward the ignition. For one brief second, I thought he was shutting it down. Then Brenda said, "Your contract includes a completion penalty." His hand stopped. "How much?" I asked. Ray looked ashamed to answer. $10,000 if the tower is still standing by noon. There it was. The clock Brenda had been racing. Not neighborhood safety. Not visual harmony. A deadline tied to money. Brenda pointed toward the ridge. "Finish the job, and you get paid. Walk away, and my attorney will handle you next." Ray stood with one hand on the machine. Behind us, still hidden beyond the cottonwoods, a siren began to rise, but Brenda heard only the bulldozer. "Move it," she ordered. Ray stood beside the cab with one hand on the grab rail. The siren beyond the cottonwoods grew louder, but Brenda pointed toward the antenna as if the rising sound meant nothing. "You're under contract," she said. "Do the job." Ray looked at me, then at Tom, then at the broken gate behind him. He climbed back into the bulldozer. For half the second, I thought he might turn the key off. Instead, the engine deepened. The tracks rolled forward. Dust lifted around the machine as it pushed past the gate remains and entered the service road leading toward my barn. The excavator followed 10 yards behind, its bucket raised just above the ground. I kept recording. "Luke is almost here," I called. Brenda didn't turn around. "Then he can watch us complete lawful work." I walked beside my pickup, keeping distance from the equipment. My trail camera above the gate caught the bulldozer from one angle. The camera mounted on the barn caught it from another. My phone captured Brenda directing the crew. 3 independent records. That mattered. Ray drove slowly, but the path ahead was narrow. To reach the antenna base, he had to pass between the equipment barn and a line of cottonwoods, where the buried emergency cable ran beneath the dirt. Brenda waved him farther left. "Stay off the gravel," she shouted. "Take the open ground." I understood why immediately. The gravel road was the obvious route. It was also where county markers and utility flags remained visible from the last inspection. Brenda wanted the crew away from anything that might raise questions. Ray lowered the blade enough to flatten brush. The steel edge scraped against the soil. I saw the younger excavator operator watching the ground ahead of him, uncertain. I raised my voice. "There are buried communication lines near that barn." He stopped. Brenda spun toward him. "Keep going." The operator leaned out of the cab. "Are they marked?" "They don't matter," Brenda said. "We're removing the system." "They matter to me," he answered. Ray stopped the bulldozer again. Brenda marched toward the excavator. "Your company accepted the scope." The operator shook his head. "I was told we were clearing an abandoned tower pad." "It is abandoned." "No, it isn't," I said. "It passed county inspection last month." Brenda pointed at me without looking away from the operator. "Do not engage with him." The young man glanced at the current county inspection sticker on the battery cabinet beside the barn. Even from where he sat, the date was visible. His expression hardened. "I'm not digging until somebody locates the line." Brenda turned to Ray. "Use the bulldozer." Ray frowned. "That isn't what the machine is for." "Then push the anchor loose." The tower stood on a concrete base stabilized by 3 steel support cables. Each cable ran down to a buried anchor set well beyond the pad. The nearest one sat beside the barn, directly in the machine's path. Ray looked toward it. "You want the anchor pulled?" "I want the tower down." He lowered his voice. "That could damage more than the tower." Brenda stepped closer to the cab. "The investor group will be here this afternoon. I am not losing this deal because you suddenly found a conscience." The words carried clearly across the pasture. Tom raised his phone again. Brenda saw him and stopped talking. Too late. The trail cameras had audio. So did mine. A white patrol vehicle flashed between the trees at the far end of the road, but the bend hit it again. I expected Brenda to stop. Instead, she looked at the time on her phone. Then she shouted, "Ray, proceed!" He set the blade against the first anchor point. The bulldozer pushed. At first, nothing happened. The engine strained. Dirt piled against the blade. The buried concrete held. Ray eased back. "That footing is deeper than you said." Brenda pointed toward the excavator. "Use the bucket." The younger operator shook his head. "No. I'll call your supervisor." "Call him." She did. She paced beside the machine, speaking fast, demanding authority she no longer had on the ground. Ray climbed down again and examined the support cable. I moved closer to the edge of the service road. "Ray, if that line releases under tension, it can swing." He nodded. "I know." "Then don't touch it." Brenda ended the call. "Your supervisor says finish the contracted work." Ray looked at the younger operator. The operator stared straight ahead. Nobody moved. For one brief moment, the entire operation stalled. Then Brenda grabbed the work authorization from her clipboard and thrust it at Ray. $10,000, she said. "You walk away, your company pays. You finish before noon, you get the balance today." Ray read the page. His face changed. "What balance?" $25,000. Tom let out a low breath. That was not normal money for clearing an abandoned structure. It was rush money, silence money, deadline money. Ray folded the page once and put it in his pocket. "That's not what my office told me." Brenda stepped back. "What does that matter?" "It matters if you paid outside the company contract." Her eyes narrowed. "Finish the job." The patrol vehicle appeared again, closer now, red and blue lights cutting through the dust. Ray saw it. So did Brenda. She pointed toward the anchor one final time. "One push. That's all I need." Ray climbed into the bulldozer. The younger operator shouted, "Ray, don't!" The engine rose. The blade pressed against the anchor. Concrete cracked beneath the soil. The support cable jerked tight. Above us, the antenna moved for the first time. Not much, only a few inches, but steel that tall isn't supposed to move at all. I stepped back and called Luke again. "They've reached the support anchor," I said. "The tower is shifting." His answer came through over the siren. "Get clear. I'm at your gate." The bulldozer pushed a second time. The earth broke open around the buried footing. The cable snapped upward, tight as a drawn wire, and the antenna leaned over my barn. For 1 second, nobody moved. The steel tower shifted against the sky, slow enough to understand and fast enough to fear. The loosened support line cut through the air and struck the side of the barn with a hard metallic crack. The sound rolled across the pasture like a rifle shot. Ray slammed the bulldozer into reverse. The machine lurched backward, tracks grinding over the broken soil. The cable dropped several feet, then snapped tight again as the tower settled at an angle. "Kill the engine," I shouted. Ray turned the key. The bulldozer went silent. The younger excavator operator had already shut down. He climbed from the cab and backed away from the trench with both hands raised, making it clear he wanted no part of what came next. Brenda stared at the leaning antenna. For the first time that morning, she looked like she understood the damage was real. Then she recovered. "It's unstable," she said. "That proves it needed removal." I looked at her. "You just tore out the anchor." It was already unsafe. My cameras recorded the whole thing. Her eyes flicked toward the barn roof. She finally noticed the black security camera mounted beneath the eave, then another on the utility pole, then the trail camera above the gate. Her expression tightened. Behind us, Deputy Luke Daniels drove through the ruined entrance and stopped his patrol vehicle across the service road. Red and blue light flashed over the bulldozer blade, the torn earth, and Brenda's white SUV. Luke stepped out before the dust settled. "Nobody touches anything," he ordered. His voice carried more authority than every paper Brenda had waved that morning. Ray climbed down and moved away from the machine. Brenda walked toward Luke with her clipboard raised. "Deputy, this is authorized association work." Luke held up one hand. "Stay where you are." She stopped. "Barely. I am Brenda Whitmore, president of Cedar Ridge Estates. I know who you are. The association has jurisdiction over this corridor." Luke looked at the broken gate, then the cut chain, then the bulldozer sitting inside my pasture. "Who cut the lock?" Nobody answered. Luke looked at Ray. "Sir?" Ray pointed toward one of the work trucks. "My foreman used bolt cutters. We were told access was approved." "By whom?" Ray looked directly at Brenda. "Her." Brenda stepped forward again. "I provided written authorization." Luke turned to her. "Authorization from the property owner?" "From the HOA board." "That wasn't my question." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Luke faced me. "Caleb, anyone injured?" "No." "Any active electrical hazard?" "Backup batteries are isolated, but the support system is damaged, and the buried communications cable may be compromised." He nodded. "Show me your property line." I walked to my pickup and opened the binder Megan had prepared. My hands were steady, but only because I forced them to be. Inside, anger was pressing hard against restraint. The gate my father had built was in pieces. The tower he had helped me raise was leaning over the barn, and Brenda was still pretending this was a paperwork disagreement. I handed Luke the deed, county plat, and recent survey. He placed them on the hood of his vehicle. Brenda moved closer. "Those records are outdated." Luke looked up. "Do not interrupt." She froze. He studied the survey, then compared it with the map Brenda offered. The difference was obvious. "Dispatch," he said into his radio. "Confirm parcel boundary for Morgan Ranch, southern service entrance." A few seconds passed. The pasture felt unnaturally quiet without the engines. The loose cable tapped against the barn siding. Metal against wood. Again. 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 Dispatch returned. "Recorded boundary places Cedar Ridge Estates, north of the Morgan fence line. No association parcel at your current coordinates." Luke looked at Brenda. "Do you have a recorded easement?" "I have a preservation map." "Recorded with the county?" "It was approved internally." "That's not an easement." "The board acted under community authority." Luke closed the binder. "This is not community property." Brenda's face hardened. "You don't understand the governing documents." "Then give me the county recording number." She said nothing. Luke turned to Ray. "Did anyone show you a deed or easement before you entered?" "No." "A court order?" "No." "Written permission from Mr. Morgan?" "No." Ray removed the folded work authorization from his pocket and handed it over. Luke read the first page, then the second. His expression changed at the payment clause. $25,000 for removal before noon? Ray nodded. "That wasn't in our standard company paperwork." Brenda answered quickly. "It was an expedited service fee." Luke looked toward the damaged tower. "Expedited enough to skip checking ownership?" She folded her arms. "This is a civil matter. Cutting a lock and damaging property after being warned may not stay civil." That was the first time Brenda went completely silent. A county truck appeared beyond the gate. Rachel Foster arrived less than a minute later, parking beside Luke's patrol vehicle. She stepped out carrying a hard case and wearing her county emergency management jacket. She didn't greet anyone. She looked at the antenna, then at the torn anchor, then at me. "How long has it been leaning?" "Less than 5 minutes." "Did they strike the buried feed?" "I don't know." Rachel opened the equipment cabinet and checked the relay indicators. 2 lights were dark. She took out a handheld radio and transmitted a test signal. No response. She tried again. Still nothing. Her face changed. "Caleb, the Western Canyon relay is offline. Luke looked toward her. What does that serve? Wildfire evacuation traffic when commercial networks fail. Brenda shook her head. That tower is private. Rachel turned slowly. The land is private. The relay is certified county emergency infrastructure under agreement with Mr. Morgan. She pointed toward the damaged cable trench. And someone just disabled it. The younger operator lowered his head. Ray stared at Brenda as if he were seeing her clearly for the first time. Luke stepped toward the bulldozer. All equipment stays where it is. Brenda found her voice again. You cannot impound private machinery over a boundary disagreement. Luke looked back at her. This stopped being a boundary disagreement when the emergency relay went dark. Rachel crouched near the exposed soil. There may be more damage underground. She brushed loose dirt away from a split conduit. Then she stopped. What is it? I asked. She reached into the trench and uncovered a second, older line running beneath the newer cable. It continued north, straight toward Cedar Ridge's gravel road. Rachel looked at me. Caleb, did you know this conduit crossed under their entrance? No. She studied the faded county markings stamped into the casing. This line predates the subdivision. Brenda took one step backward. It was small, but I saw it. And so did Luke. Because the moment Rachel uncovered that buried conduit, Brenda stopped looking at the damaged antenna. She started looking at the road. Luke noticed the change too. He stepped between Brenda and the exposed trench. Is there something about that line you want to explain? No. Her answer came too quickly. Rachel brushed more dirt from the conduit. The casing was older than the subdivision, but the county markings were still readable beneath the dust. Emergency Communications, West Canyon Relay. She followed the line with her eyes toward Cedar Ridge's gravel entrance. This doesn't end at Caleb's barn, she said. It runs north under the HOA road. Brenda lifted her clipboard again. That corridor belongs to the association. Luke turned toward her. Dispatch just confirmed it doesn't. The surface road does. That's not what you claimed 10 minutes ago. Brenda looked past him toward the equipment. Can we move the machines now? They're blocking access. No. Luke's answer was immediate. Every machine stays shut down until the scene is documented. Ray raised both hands. That's fine with me. The younger operator nodded. Brenda stared at them. You have contractual obligations. Ray looked at the leaning tower. We also have insurance. That ended the discussion. Luke called for another deputy and a county evidence technician. Then he ordered everyone away from the damaged anchor while Rachel checked the tower's stability. She placed a level against the base plate, measured the lean, and examined the support lines one by one. The structure can be stabilized, she said, but nobody touches the second anchor. She pointed toward the excavator. If that one releases, the tower could come down across the barn. Luke moved his patrol vehicle farther back and stretched yellow tape across the service road. Brenda watched him. You are treating me like a criminal. I'm treating this like a documented property damage scene. I acted for public safety. Rachel stood. You disabled public safety. Brenda's face reddened. That relay was never disclosed to the HOA. It was recorded with the county before Cedar Ridge existed. Then the county should have informed us. The developer received the utility records during subdivision review. Brenda went still again. Rachel saw it. So you did know there was infrastructure here? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Luke opened Brenda's board authorization and read it more carefully. This document describes the tower as abandoned. That was our understanding. Whose understanding? The board's. Who inspected it? Brenda hesitated. Our compliance committee reviewed the site. From inside the ranch. No. Then how did they determine it was abandoned? She looked toward the subdivision. Visual observation, Luke wrote something in his notebook. From 300 feet away. Brenda said nothing. I stood beside my pickup and watched the power shift one question at a time. 20 minutes earlier, Brenda had controlled the machines, the workers, and the schedule. Now the engines were silent. The road was taped off. Her contractor was cooperating with Luke, and every answer she gave created another problem. Rachel asked me for the emergency agreement. I handed her the binder. She opened the plastic sleeve and showed Luke the recorded county license. The document authorized installation, inspection, repair, and emergency access to the relay site. It identified my father as the original landowner, granting the county limited use of the corridor. Luke read the legal description twice. This is a county utility license. Correct, Rachel said. Does Cedar Ridge have any rights under it? None. Can the HOA remove or alter equipment covered by it? No. Could they authorize a contractor to do so? Absolutely not. Brenda stepped closer. The document says access corridor. It grants access to the county, Rachel replied. Not to you. The road was built over that corridor. That doesn't transfer ownership. Brenda pointed toward the gravel entrance. Cedar Ridge has maintained that road for years. Maintenance isn't a deed, I said. She turned on me. You've been using our road too. No. You've been using the old ranch utility route my father allowed the county to cross. For the first time, I saw doubt in her eyes. Not about the antenna, about the road beneath Cedar Ridge. Luke asked dispatch to pull the original subdivision plat and all recorded easements tied to the entrance corridor. While we waited, the second deputy arrived and began photographing the cut chain, broken posts, track marks, anchor damage, and exposed conduit. Ray gave a formal statement beside his truck. He told Luke that Brenda had represented the corridor as HOA-owned property. He produced emails, the work authorization, and the separate payment clause promising $25,000 for completion before noon. Luke asked who had signed the payment. Ray pointed to Brenda. She did personally. Brenda interrupted. That payment was reimbursable. By the HOA? Luke asked. Yes. Was it approved in the board minutes? She looked away. Luke wrote again. Tom handed over his audio recording. The deputy copied the file and logged the time, location, and device details. Then dispatch answered. The radio crackled across the quiet pasture. Original Cedar Ridge subdivision plat located. No HOA easement over Morgan parcel. Utility corridor reserved exclusively for county emergency communications and landowner access. Luke looked directly at Brenda. Dispatch continued. Additional note. Cedar Ridge entrance road appears partially constructed within the historic Morgan utility corridor. County review may be required. Nobody spoke. The loose support cable tapped the barn again. Brenda's confidence finally cracked. This is absurd, she said. That road has been there for 12 years. Luke folded the authorization and placed it in an evidence envelope. That doesn't change where it was built. She stepped toward her SUV. Luke moved in front of her. You're not leaving yet. Her eyes widened. Am I under arrest? Not at this time. Then move. No. His voice remained calm. You directed contractors through a locked gate, after written notice, onto property you did not own. You authorized damage to a permitted emergency relay. We are still determining whether records were falsified to support that entry. Brenda looked toward Ray, but he would not meet her eyes. She looked toward Tom. He held his phone at his side, recording. She looked toward me last. I felt no triumph. Not yet. The tower was damaged. The relay was offline. My gate was broken. But the story had changed. I was no longer the rancher trying to prove Brenda had crossed a line. The sheriff, the county, the contractor, and the records were all standing on my side of it. Rachel crouched beside the trench again and uncovered another stamped section of conduit. Then she called Luke over. There's a splice marker here. What does that mean? It means somebody opened this line after the subdivision was built. She pointed north toward Cedar Ridge's entrance, and according to the date code, it happened 6 years ago. Luke looked at Brenda. Her face lost what little color remained, because the buried line did not merely prove the HOA had no easement. It suggested someone inside Cedar Ridge had already known exactly where the old county corridor was. Rachel photographed the splice marker while Luke called the county public works office. Within 10 minutes, an engineer confirmed the date code matched a repair permit issued 6 years earlier during expansion of Cedar Ridge's entrance road. The permit listed one requesting party, Cedar Ridge Estates. Luke lowered the radio slowly. Who was president then? Brenda folded her arms. I was on the board. That wasn't my question. She looked toward the subdivision. I became president the following year. Rachel stood beside the trench. But you had access to the repair records. Board members don't review every utility permit. Someone did, Luke said. The application references this exact corridor. Brenda said nothing. The county evidence technician marked the conduit location with orange flags, starting near my barn and continuing north toward the HOA entrance. The line ran beneath the gravel road Brenda had claimed as proof of association control. Instead, the road now pointed back to my family's land records. Megan arrived before noon. She parked outside the damaged gate and walked in carrying a legal pad and a second binder. She took one look at the leaning antenna, then at Brenda. You were warned, Brenda answered coldly. This was authorized board action. Megan held up a copy of the certified delivery receipt. You signed for my letter Tuesday morning. The board disagreed with your interpretation. Property ownership isn't an interpretation. Megan joined Luke at the hood of his patrol vehicle. He showed her the county utility license, the splice marker photographs, Ray's authorization, and Tom's recording. She read the payment clause twice. $25,000 before noon, she said. Who was arriving this afternoon? Brenda looked away. Megan turned to me. Caleb, Tom was right. I found a development option filed last month. She opened her binder. A company called North Peak Capital had signed a conditional purchase agreement for 42 acres along Cedar Ridge's western ridge. The deal included 12 luxury home sites marketed for uninterrupted canyon views. The closing inspection was scheduled for that afternoon. I looked toward the antenna rising above the barn. From those lots, the tower sits directly in the view. Megan nodded. And the agreement contains a visual obstruction clause. Ray stepped closer. What does that mean? If any undisclosed structure materially affects the advertised views, the buyer can reduce the price or walk away, Brenda cut in. The antenna was never supposed to remain. Megan looked at her. According to whom? The preservation plan. The false map? It is not false. Megan placed the county plat beside Brenda's map on the patrol hood. The county line ended at my fence. The HOA line continued deep into the ranch and wrapped around the antenna pad. Megan tapped the shaded area. Who created this version? Our planning committee. Name them. Brenda hesitated. I would have to review the records. Luke spoke without looking up. You'll get that opportunity, Megan continued. This map was included in the investor packet. Brenda's face changed. Only slightly. Enough, Megan noticed. So you did know. I know many documents are circulated. North Peak relied on this one. Megan handed Luke a printed email. The message had been sent from Brenda's HOA account to the investor's attorney 2 weeks earlier. The attached subject line read, Confirmed control of Western Visual Corridor. Luke read the message aloud. Cedar Ridge Estates possesses full maintenance and enforcement authority over the land, affecting all Western Ridge views. He looked at Brenda. That's your email. It was based on the information available to me. The real plat was available. Our legal committee believed the corridor was transferable. Megan shook her head. A county utility license is not transferable to an HOA. It doesn't grant ownership. It doesn't grant development rights. It doesn't even grant landscaping authority. Rachel pointed toward the exposed conduit. It allows the county to maintain emergency communications. That's all. Brenda's argument collapsed into silence. By early afternoon, county workers had traced the old line beneath the first section of the Cedar Ridge Road. They found the 6-year-old splice under a concrete utility box hidden behind decorative stonework near the entrance. The box carried no county label. Inside were records of 2 unauthorized connections. One fed the HOA gatehouse communication panel. The other ran toward the clubhouse. Rachel examined the wiring. They tapped into the emergency corridor. Luke frowned. Is that legal? Not without county approval. Was there approval? She checked the permit database on her tablet. No. The HOA had not only known about the buried line, it had used it. For 6 years. Megan turned toward Brenda. Your association used Caleb's family corridor to support its private entrance system, then claimed the same corridor gave you authority to enter his ranch. Brenda's voice dropped. I didn't install those connections. But you sent investors a map built around them. She stared at the road. The first black SUV from North Peak Capital appeared at the far end of Cedar Ridge's entrance. Then another. The investor tour had arrived. Brenda stepped toward Luke. You need to clear this road. No. This is a private business matter. Luke looked at the yellow tape, the exposed utility box, and the damaged tower beyond the pasture. It's an active investigation. The SUVs stopped behind the patrol vehicles. A man in a dark jacket climbed out and approached, holding a brochure with a photograph of the Ridge homes. The image showed open sky, clean mountain lines, and no antenna. He looked past the brochure toward my ranch, then at the tower, then at Brenda. Mrs. Whitmore, he said, you told us that structure was outside the protected view corridor. Brenda tried to answer. Megan placed the real county plat on the hood between them. The investor studied it in silence. Then he looked at the altered map attached to his brochure. They were nearly identical except for one thing. The HOA version moved my boundary. The man closed the brochure. Our counsel will be contacting you. He returned to the SUV without touring a single lot. Both vehicles turned around. Brenda watched millions of dollars disappear down the road. Megan leaned closer to me. This is bigger than trespass now. How much bigger? Fraud, possibly. Misrepresentation, unauthorized utility use. Maybe more. She looked toward the clubhouse. I want their emails, board records, investor files, and every version of that map. Brenda finally spoke. You can't have private association communications. Megan met her eyes. Not today. Then she closed the binder. But after I file, a judge can order them. And for the first time, Brenda seemed to understand that the bulldozer had not erased the evidence. It had uncovered it. The investor vehicles disappeared down the county road without stopping again. Nobody chased them. Nobody tried to explain. The silence they left behind said more than any argument ever could. Brenda watched until the last SUV vanished beyond the ridge. Then she turned back toward Megan with a confidence that looked rehearsed instead of real. This isn't over. Megan closed her binder. No, it isn't. By late afternoon, the county had finished photographing every inch of the damaged site. Survey stakes marked the property line. Orange flags traced the buried communications corridor. The bulldozer and excavator remained exactly where Luke had ordered them left. Nothing would move until investigators were finished. Luke approached me holding an evidence receipt. I've collected the recordings from your cameras. I nodded. What about Tom's audio? In evidence. Ray's paperwork. In evidence. The board authorization. Luke slid another envelope into his case. In evidence. Every document Brenda had relied upon that morning was now part of the official investigation. Megan walked over carrying her laptop. I've been reviewing the HOA emails produced voluntarily by their attorney. Voluntarily? He called after seeing what happened here. What changed his mind? He realized his own advice had been ignored. She opened one message. It was sent Wednesday morning. She rotated the screen toward Luke and me. The sender was the HOA attorney. The recipient was Brenda Whitmore. The subject line read, "Do not authorize entry." The message was brief. Brenda, based on the deed and survey provided by Mr. Morgan's counsel, Cedar Ridge Estates should not enter the property without either written permission or a court order. Any attempt to remove the antenna before ownership is judicially determined creates unnecessary legal exposure. Please suspend all contractor activity. Luke looked at Brenda. You received this? She didn't answer. Megan clicked the next email. It had been sent 32 minutes later, from Brenda, to the HOA attorney. Your concerns are noted. Waiting is not an option. Once the structure is removed, restoration becomes his responsibility, not ours. Nobody spoke. Luke read it twice before placing a printed copy into the evidence folder. Ray slowly exhaled. She never showed us any of that. I know, Luke replied. She said legal had already cleared everything. Brenda finally spoke. Those emails are privileged. Megan calmly shook her head. They stopped being privileged the moment your attorney voluntarily released them to defend his own advice. Brenda looked stunned. My attorney did what? He chose not to become your co-defendant. That landed harder than anything else had all day. For the first time since arriving at my ranch, Brenda looked alone. Not because everyone had turned against her, because everyone was protecting themselves from her. Tom walked over carrying a small notebook. I remembered something. Luke looked up. What is it? 6 months ago, they replaced the subdivision entrance sign. So? They brought surveyors out first. Megan immediately understood. If surveyors were hired, there will be invoices. And field notes, I added. Exactly. She made another note. If those surveyors warned the HOA where the actual boundary was, that becomes important. Luke nodded. I'll subpoena them. Before anyone said another word, Brenda's phone rang. She answered immediately. Her expression changed almost at once. No. She listened. I'm looking at it right now. Another pause, then quietly, I understand. She lowered the phone. Luke waited. Problem? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward the empty county road where the investors had disappeared. Finally, she spoke. They terminated the purchase option. Megan asked only one question. Effective immediately? Brenda nodded. They're alleging material misrepresentation. Ray rubbed his forehead. So that's why today mattered. Nobody contradicted him. The investor deadline, the rush payment, the fabricated preservation map, the bulldozer. Every piece fit together. Brenda hadn't been trying to beautify the neighborhood. She had been trying to protect a multi-million-dollar real estate deal long enough for the papers to be signed. Luke closed his notebook. I'll need one more thing. What? The original board minutes. They're confidential. They're evidence. They belong to the association. If they authorized today's entry, they're relevant. Brenda hesitated. They're in the clubhouse. Luke looked at the second deputy. Would you accompany Mrs. Whitmore? She looked offended. You think I'll destroy records? Luke answered without emotion. I think preserving evidence is my job. That evening, Megan and I sat at my kitchen table while engineers stabilized the antenna outside. The relay remained offline, but Rachel believed it could be restored once the damaged anchor and conduit were repaired. Megan organized the growing stack of documents: civil trespass, property damage, emergency repair costs, survey expenses, loss of communications service, attorney fees. Then she placed one final folder on top. What is that? The lawsuit. Already? She smiled slightly. Caleb, today they gave us almost everything we needed. I looked toward the window where the leaning tower stood against the darkening sky. It still doesn't feel like winning. It isn't. She closed the folder. It's accountability. The following Monday, Cedar Ridge held an emergency board meeting. Residents packed the clubhouse. Many had heard about the sheriff. Most had seen videos spreading across the county before sunset on Friday. Ray's company had suspended all work for the HOA. North Peak Capital had withdrawn from negotiations. Rumors were everywhere. But no one inside that room knew what Megan had received that afternoon. Not just the emails, not just the attorney's warning. When Luke returned from the clubhouse carrying the original board minutes, he handed them directly to Megan. She opened to the final page, then stopped. She looked at me, then at Luke. "What is it?" I asked. She slid the minutes across the table. At the bottom of the approval page, beneath Brenda's signature, was one handwritten sentence added after the vote. If legal objections continue, remove the tower before any injunction can be filed. Megan looked up slowly. They didn't just ignore the law. She closed the binder. They planned to outrun it. Nobody at the table argued. They didn't have to. The handwritten note in the board minutes said everything the rest of the evidence had been pointing toward since the bulldozer crossed my fence. This had never been a misunderstanding over property lines. It had been a calculated decision to remove my antenna before any judge could stop them. Megan slid the minutes into a separate evidence folder. "That note changes the case." Luke nodded. "It shows intent." "It shows knowledge," Megan corrected. "They knew there was a legal dispute. They knew they had been warned. They decided to act anyway." For the first time since Friday morning, I felt something other than anger. Certainty. Not because the antenna was repaired. It wasn't. Not because my gate had been rebuilt. It hadn't. But because the truth no longer depended on my word. It was sitting inside official files, audio recordings, county records, certified mail receipts, photographs, emails, and Brenda's own handwriting. 2 weeks later, the courtroom wasn't crowded. Most property hearings aren't. There were no dramatic speeches or surprise witnesses, only documents: the county survey, the recorded deed, the utility license, the emergency communications agreement, the contractor's work authorization, the payment clause, the investor brochure, the altered preservation map, the authentic county plat, the attorney's warning emails, and finally, the HOA board minutes. The judge spent nearly an hour comparing the two maps. When he finished, he looked directly at Brenda. "Can you identify any recorded county document granting Cedar Ridge Estates authority over Mr. Morgan's property?" "No, Your Honor." "Can you identify any court order authorizing entry onto his land?" "No." "Can you identify any recorded easement permitting removal of the antenna?" "No." The judge folded his hands. "Then this court finds that the association possessed no lawful authority to enter the Morgan Ranch." The courtroom stayed quiet. He continued. "The evidence further establishes that the defendants proceeded after receiving written legal notice disputing ownership, after being advised by counsel to suspend action, and after authorizing contractors to enter private property regardless." He looked toward the damaged photographs of my gate. Those decisions carried consequences. The civil judgment was entered that afternoon. Cedar Ridge Estates and Brenda Whitmore were ordered to pay for the damaged gate, emergency stabilization of the antenna, restoration of the communications line, engineering inspections, survey costs, attorney's fees, and every documented expense caused by the unlawful entry. Separate from the civil judgment, the county recorded a permanent clarification confirming that the HOA possessed no ownership, easement, maintenance authority, or enforcement rights anywhere on my ranch. The altered preservation map was formally rejected from the county record. It would never be used again. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited for Brenda. She declined to answer questions. By the following week, Cedar Ridge's board held another emergency meeting. This time, the residents weren't there to applaud. They wanted answers. Why had association money been spent on private contractors? Why had the board ignored the attorney? Why had investors been shown an altered map? Why had the HOA risked everyone's insurance over land it never owned? One by one, board members admitted they had relied on Brenda's representations. Several resigned that evening. Brenda resigned before they could remove her. The association's insurance carrier later informed the remaining board that intentional actions taken outside legal authority would not be covered under the policy. The financial responsibility stayed exactly where the evidence placed it. Ray Miller visited my ranch a month later. He walked through the rebuilt southern gate carrying a small box. I figured these belonged back here. Inside were the original gate hinges his crew had removed before the bulldozer pushed through. I should have asked more questions, he said. You stopped when it mattered. I didn't stop soon enough. No, I answered honestly. But you told the truth afterward. He nodded. That counts. It does. Rachel Foster supervised the final inspection of the repaired relay. The damaged conduit had been replaced. The support anchor had been reset deeper than before. The tower stood perfectly vertical again. She connected her radio. West Canyon Relay? This is county emergency. Static. Then a clear reply echoed through the speaker. Loud and clear, Rachel smiled. We're back online. Tom stood beside me watching the red beacon blink to life above the tower. You know, he said, all this started because someone couldn't stand looking at it. I looked toward Cedar Ridge on the opposite ridge. The antenna was still visible, exactly where it had always been. The funny part, I said, is that nobody ever needed to move the tower. Tom looked at me. They only needed to tell the truth. Months later, a new board took over Cedar Ridge Estates. One of their first actions was sending me a letter. Not another violation notice, an apology. They acknowledged the association had acted outside its authority, confirmed they recognized every recorded property boundary, and requested a meeting to discuss future communication rather than conflict. I accepted, not because I had forgotten what happened, because good neighbors are worth more than long grudges. The rebuilt gate now opens as smoothly as the old one ever did. The antenna still watches over the ranch. During wildfire season, its signal still reaches places where cell phones cannot. Sometimes I stop beside the repaired fence before heading into town. The new gateposts look almost identical to the originals. Most people would never know a bulldozer once came through there, but I do. Every fresh coat of paint, every repaired cable, every survey marker reminds me of something my father used to say whenever we walked these property lines together. Land remembers the truth even when people forget it. Brenda tried to move that truth with a bulldozer, a fabricated map, and borrowed authority. She failed because paper cannot erase a recorded deed. Power cannot replace lawful ownership. And in the end, the line that mattered most was never the one she drew on her map. It was the one the law had recognized all along.
That's what the lessons I carry away from all of this. A fence can be broken, a gate can be rebuilt, even an emergency tower can be repaired, but the strongest protection any landowner has isn't agent or price. It's keeping good record, knowing the truth about your property, and having the patience to let the facts speak when emotions are running high. If I tried to match frustration with frustration, none of this would have ended the way it did. What made the difference was staying steady, documenting everything, and trusting the legal process to do its job. I think that's something worth remembering far beyond this bridge. Whether it's a piece of land, a family home, or something you work your whole life to build, standing your ground doesn't always mean raising your voice. Sometimes it means staying calm while everyone else is brushing, because truth has a way of lasting longer than pressure ever will. That's the kind of strength I hope never goes out of style. Now, I really glad to hear from you. If you were in my booth, would you have handled it the same way, or would you have done something differently? Comment 1 if you believe keeping calm and relying on the law is the right path. Comment 0 if you think you would have taken a different approach. And if you ever had to defend your property or deal with an HOA that's brought the line, I appreciate hearing your story too. If you enjoy a story about ordinary people standing firm with patience, evidence, and quiet determination, I'd be grateful if you subscribe. There are plenty more branch and HOA stories ahead. I'd love to have you along for the ride.